So let's start by making the dough for our wrappers. Into the bowl of a stand mixer, I'm going to add 2 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm going to add in about a tablespoon of vegetable oil or olive oil. Go ahead and crack an egg into there as well as a teaspoon of salt. Using my dough hook attachment, I'm going to set the speed to 2. That's pretty low on this machine. And I'm going to slowly drizzle in some water, scraping down the sides as needed. We're looking for a tacky, sticky kind of dough, similar to a ciabatta dough if you've ever made ciabatta bread before. Basically what I'm saying is you want it to stick to your work surface in kind of a frustrating kind of way. So be sure to have your bench scraper handy. Once that comes together, let's knead it briefly until it smooths on out. Next up, we want to portion this out into golf ball sized portions. For my 2 cups of flour, that ended up being 8 portions, but your mileage may vary. Oil up a baking sheet or a plate. Then we're going to shape our dough balls by first tucking in the edges into the center, then flipping these over and using the edges of our palms, we're going to form some taut little balls. Place those balls on the sheet tray. We're going to drizzle them with some oil. And then covering them with a tea towel, we're going to let them rest for at least 10 or 15 minutes until the gluten has relaxed. While the dough is resting, we can start making the filling for our murtabak. Throw some oil into a skillet over medium-high heat. And once it's nice and hot, we're going to add in a diced up onion. And saute that until it's translucent. Once it's picked up some color, we're going to add in some minced garlic. Saute that as well until people start coming by and asking what you're cooking. Then we're going to add in 500 grams of ground meat. I'm using lamb in this case, but you could use anything from beef to chicken. Probably don't use pork just to be respectful, but to each their own. And we want to break up that meat into little granules while we're browning it. So keep that spatula going and make sure every surface comes in contact with the pan. Season with some salt. Next, we need to make a spice blend called baharat. It's basically the garam masala of Middle Eastern spices. So basically you can add whatever you have in your pantry. In this case, I'm using equal parts of cinnamon, cloves, cumin, turmeric, coriander, cardamom, some freshly ground black pepper, cayenne, and ground nutmeg. I'm going to add in a couple of teaspoons of that. Give it all a good mix to incorporate. And then remove it to a bowl to cool off. Once it's nice and cool, I'm going to add in a diced up leek. This one was nice and clean, but usually leeks have a ton of dirt on them, so be sure to rinse them thoroughly. And I'm going to add in about a handful of chopped parsley. Next up, I've got a diced tomato. And here I've got a pretty big jalapeno. You can use any sort of chili pepper that you want. It's not meant to be particularly spicy, but if you want to use something spicier than this, go right ahead. I'm not going to stop you because I can't stop myself. Go ahead and dice that up and add it in. along with 2 cracked eggs. Now we can go ahead and mix those in, and our filling is all set. So at this point, our dough should be ready to go. So peel back that tea towel. I'm gonna thoroughly oil up my work surface. In this case, I'm using a wood countertop, so the oil is totally fine to get on there, but feel free to use some plastic wrap if you want. I'm gonna press out one of my rounds of dough until it's as thin as I possibly can get it. Then, using the stickiness of the dough to my benefit, I'm going to stretch that out carefully until it turns into a translucent sheet. Next up, you're going to need some egg roll skins or wonton wrappers. These are large ones, but you could use slightly smaller ones if you want to make smaller pockets. These are going to serve an important purpose to make sure that our filling doesn't break through this incredibly thin wrapper. So lay that down in the middle, and then we're going to take our filling and stack it on top. Trying to match the corners as closely as possible. Now we're going to peel the edges and fold them over in 2 directions, and then the opposite directions until we have a little envelope. Now into a skillet, we're going to add some more oil, heat it up to high heat, and drop in our pocket. Let's crisp that up on one side. Give it a careful flip, trying to avoid all the splatters of oil. And once it's crisp on the other side, we can remove it out to a cooling rack. So it's basically a Middle Eastern egg roll. You've got the crispy pastry exterior, you've got some meat and fillings on the inside, but the flavors are distinctly Middle Eastern. That earthy spice blend is unmistakable, and it gets balanced out real nicely by the leeks and the tomatoes. So it doesn't end up being too heavy, even with all that meat and oil that's in there. So maybe next time you're actually able to have some friends over for a bite to eat, give this a try. So I've got a link to the full recipe in the description below. And if you like this video, then you might like this one where I show you how to make Uzbek lamb soup. See you next time. Cheers.